Welcome to another episode of Bartley Woodworking. Today I'm going to show you how to put this gorgeous cherry end table to my left. I went to the local sawmill and I found a piece just perfect for it. I only had to cut off about 3/4 of an inch to get it into this size. With it being about 20 inches wide, it was a problem for my planer because it's only 13 inches wide, so it wouldn't fit. So I had to bring a hand plane to it along with my Rotex 125 to get rid of all the sawmill marks and to get it flat. Before I get started on all the power tools and process I use to make it, you can always follow me at Bartley Woodwork on Twitter and at Bartley Woodworking on Instagram to catch these projects as I make them before these how-to videos post. Let me get started on what tools I used and the process I used to make this piece. The tools you can use to build your own end table are a track saw, sander, domino or a biscuit joiner, jack plane, block plane, chisel to clean up the edges, lots of sandpaper, glue, painter's tape for the two-part epoxy, stain, and a finish, along with the bristle brushes and foam brushes. First, you'll need to remove all the sawmill marks and flatten the slab. You can use a jointer plane to flatten the wood, or the sander just remove the sawmill marks. Since the slab is too large, I have to use hand tools I can bring to the slab. Next, I need to square the ends. This will also cut out the seal the sawmill uses to let the slab dry evenly. I'm using a Trex saw since the slab is almost 2 feet wide and wouldn't fit my miter saw. I decided to keep the live edge, and that rolls out the table saw. If you do want to keep the live edge, you need to mark a line by eyeing it, draw it, and fine tune it over and over again until you find it just right. With the end square, you can line up the track saw for the next cut. I have support blocks under both pieces so I don't cut into my workbench. The slab is around 2 inches thick, so I take the cut slow. If you leave the blade in one spot too long, it will burn the wood. I only have one chance to get this right. Most slabs have some form of crack that formed during drying. Be extra careful around them as the wood becomes unsupported when you cut around them. The track saw I'm using has a 45-degree stop on it. You can only cut 2 inches deep, and at a 45-degree angle that won't be deep enough for the miter joints. To finish the cut, I had to use a handsaw and hand plane to finish it. You can use either dominoes, biscuits, or dowels to help strengthen this miter joint. I didn't create a shelf or a drawer on this end table, which would have increased its strength as well. I used 6x40mm dominoes and I tested to make sure the cutter didn't go all the way through. Since my miters were not perfect and I managed to get my reference face backwards, I had to shorten a few dominoes to get the joint to close. Since the slab I'm using had crack that formed during drying, I use my sander with an interfacing pad, which is a fancy way to say large foam sanding pad. The trick to strengthen an end grain joint like this one is to let the glue soak in first, and apply a second coat. Watch the next time you put glue on end grain and how it soaks in quicker than face grain does. Also, if you're using biscuit or dowels, make sure to put the glue in the joint first instead of just only on the biscuit, dowel, or domino. My miters were not perfect before my glue up. Clean up the excess glue with a chisel and use wood putty to fill in the gap here. The drying crack on the slab ended up reaching the center of the end table. To stabilize the crack, I used West Systems 2-part epoxy. I had great luck with it as a clear coat on previous project. You mix in some black pigment, you get a gorgeous look once cured. The epoxy does get everywhere and stick to everything, so take precautions. Put painter's tape on the bottom of the crack and up the sides. Don't try to fill up the crack in the first attempt or the epoxy will leak out and ruin your floor. I have 2 bad spots on my brand new tile in the basement as proof. You can see all the painter's tape I used to keep the epoxy in. Plus, more smaller cracks started to form on the edge. Epoxy is some tough stuff, and you'll lose a sanding disc for the process. If you had to use wood putty too, don't sand too close to the edge or you'll go all the way through it. Cherry has a tendency to blotch with most stains or finishes, like someone spilled milk on it when you were not looking. I used a cherry gel stain to work around the issue. The gel stain I'm using is from Minwax and is oil based, but you can basically think of it as a paint almost. Most production furniture shops use a process called toning on cherry to get that perfect look. This is close to the same process and easier. Next, I prepared to apply a water-based finish to the end table. Since I used an oil-based stain, you need to let it dry for 3 to 4 days before attempting to finish it. Do a light sanding with 220 grit by hand to wipe off all the dust. I just use a cheap foam brush here to apply the finish. Make sure to have lights handy at a low angle to catch the spots you might miss. Apply it slowly to give it enough time to level out. I sped the clip up by 400%, so slow the video down if you want to see how slow I actually moved. The finish I'm using is the Enduro bar from General Finishes. Never finished a live edge before. Tried a cheap small brush and kept pushing the finish into all the edge as much as possible. I made the mistake of using a foam brush and that did not work out well. I used my table saw top to see how level the legs were. They were not that level after all. I cheated and used a low grit sandpaper to level out the legs. It worked, but it still feels like cheating. Once everything was dried, it turned out great. 3 coats of finish and has a very glossy look to it. You can see all the reflections it picks up and future fingerprints.